Hey, Global Hack Week. I have a banner up and I'm dropping it now. My name is Rosendo from MLH. I'm so happy to have y'all here today. Thanks for joining us. We have a wonderful workshop scheduled for you. We're going to be going through a really cool product called Contentful. So if you're into, front end development and you want to build your own websites in a quick and easy way, Contentful is one of those tools that'll allow you to do so. We're also being joined by a former MLHer. Some of y'all may know him, but I will let him introduce himself in a moment. Before we jump into that, thank you for keeping the chat live, y'all. Um, are you the only one who can't see Rosendo? Can y'all not see me on the screen? Or now I'm a little worried. I should be up. If my video is not working, I apologize. I hope you can see me at the very least. Great. Great. Also, hear me as well. If you have not registered, jump into the registration link below. Great. Thank you for confirming that you can see me. I am not a ghost. I am quite visible. Appreciate it. A wild Rosendo has entered the screen. I love it, Matt. Thank you. As far as the registration goes, make sure you jump into that link, register for this workshop. And without any further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and get it started and bring Harshal onto the stream for y'all. All right, and here we go.
Hey, thank you all. Thank you, Rosendo, for bringing me up. Hey, you all. I know most of you might know me, some of you might not. It's super exciting for me to come back to MLH as a sponsor now. So I joined the MLH community as a hacker. I later on became an MLH coach, and now I came back to MLH as a sponsor. And I'm super excited to be here and hang out with you all today. But uh, but I'm gonna do a quick introduction in more in later in my slides. So if we can have my screen up, we want to get started with this. All right. So I have joined Contentful, and I have been enjoying working at Contentful. And I thought this is a good opportunity for me to teach you all how to use Contentful for your own benefit to build your personal websites. Now I see couple of questions coming in the chat. What is Contentful? Don't worry, I'm gonna cover that in the next few minutes. All right. So before I jump into that, I'm going to do a quick introduction about myself. My name is Harshal Agrawal, and I work as a developer advocate at Contentful. Previously, I worked at an automation startup called N10. I love to experiment a lot with different technologies. A recent experiment that I have been doing is connecting a PS5 controller to web applications. If you think that's pretty slick, pretty cool, and you want to try it out yourself, I have already done a couple of talks, and those talks you can find on my website. Again, well, the website is built with Contentful. Uh, and if you just want to try it out yourself, you might want to look into something called the Web HID API or the Gamepad API. All right. Moving forward, the agenda for the talk today, for the workshop today looks something like this. We're going to use Remix, which is a front end framework to build a website, and we're going to use Contentful to manage the content. We're going to start with looking into what Contentful is, creating entries in Contentful, creating content types, fetching content from Contentful, and all those things. Again, I'm going to walk you through all the steps of getting started with it and everything in the slides as well. And you can already see that is a link in the chat. So go ahead, hop onto that link to create an account because we will be needing an account to use Contentful. All right. First thing first, let's talk a bit about Remix. Now, for the folks who are very much new to the web development ecosystem, this framework is like my personal framework because it no matter your experience in the web development ecosystem, you are gonna feel at home with Remix. Remix makes web development easy because of the mental model that we it provides. So we're gonna use Remix. Remix is built on top of React Router, which is basically a routing package or a routing library for React. And the next thing we're going to use is Contentful. Now, Contentful, for everyone who does not know what it is, it's a composable content platform with an API first architecture. But what does that really mean? So let's try to break it down. Let's just say you have a website for your community, or for yourself, your portfolio website, or for your guild, because we are at the Global Hack Week today, right? And you have a lot of content on these websites. This can be the workshops, this can be information of like a list of all your members, this can be blogs, anything that is content out there, right? Now, imagine a scenario where you have loads and loads of content and you have a huge team. And every time you want to update this content, or someone else on your team wants to update this content, they would go to the web team who manages the website, ask them to update the content. In in a real world scenario, this is not ideal, because every time this reduces the efforts that the web team is making. It slows them down on shipping out new features. So with a platform like Contentful, you and your team can manage the content behind the scenes, and you just need to add the content and publish the content, and that's it. Your content is live, and you can start, and you don't have to make any changes, or no one has to make any changes on your websites as well. All right, I know I talked a little bit about Contentful as well, and I'm just gonna go through the comments, see if we got any questions in the chat before we get started with the workshop. All right, I see what is Contentful. I hope this quick summary gave you an idea of what Contentful is. But if you have any specific question, do let me know, and I'll be happy to answer that. How Remix is different than Bootstrap, or is it just similar? That's a wonderful question. So Bootstrap is basically a CSS framework. It helps you with styling your websites, while Remix is basically a framework which helps you create your whole website. We're gonna look into Remix, and once we start working with Remix, you will get an idea of how different a CSS framework is and how different a web framework is. Right, I see I got Adam in the chat. Hey Adam, how's it going? I hope you're doing great. Do I need to know React first before starting Remix? You don't really need to know React before you start Remix. That's the beauty of Remix. All you need to know is like fundamentals of JavaScript, because that's what Remix basically uses under the hood. And of course, you also need to know HTML and CSS. All right. So I'm gonna move forward and change the screen over here. So this is like the very simple website that I have created for this particular workshop. As you can see, it has a name. It has like two particular links. One is for GitHub, one is for LinkedIn. You can add more links if you want. And there are like, for now, there's two pages. One is the blog and the other is about. So if I click on blog, it takes me to the blog page. Oops, I think I've zoomed in a lot. Okay. It takes onto the blog page. It gets this blogs coming in from Contentful, and then I can go on to any of these blogs, click on it, and it renders my blog. The same thing is happening on the about page. Over here, I have my information and a small image that I just drew of myself. So this is all. Again, we're gonna work together and create together. And to do that, I have already created a repository on GitHub. So I'm gonna just quickly copy the link and share it in the chat. And you also got the link on your screen. So that's the link that we are gonna, that's the repository that we are gonna use in today's workshop. Now, step one is something that we all can skip today, because we have the Webpo already set up for ourselves. One cool thing about this is you don't have to really like do it locally. You can just hit on the dot button on your keyboard, and you can open it on GitHub code spaces and just use it out of the box. So you don't have to worry about installing any of those things. I've already configured it for you. So all you have to do is just go to step 2. That's where we are actually going to get started with this workshop, and then follow along. All right. So in step 2, as it says, we're going to create a blog content type in Contentful. We are going to add entries for that blog, and we will create an about content type and add an entry for the about content type as well. All right. So now I'm gonna move to Contentful, and I see a lot of discussion going on between Bootstrap and Tailwind. That's interesting. FYI, this particular website uses Tailwind CSS. I'm also a huge fan of Tailwind CSS, so I've been using Tailwind CSS for a while. But again, you can use Bootstrap if you want, but this particular portfolio website is using Tailwind CSS. All right, now I have already, this repo is already publicly available, so I'm going to try to cover as much as I can. My main intention is to cover step 2 and step 3 because you already have this repo. It contains everything in here. So if you click on step 2, it takes you step by step on what you have to do, which files you have to create, what changes you have to make, right? So you don't have to worry about missing out on any of those things. All right. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with step 2, and I already have my GitHub. I already have my project locally running, so I'm just going to skip to that particular branch. Let's go to step 2. And over here is my project. Now, folks in the chat, let me know if the screen is visible or not. And again, I am monitoring the chat throughout this workshop. So if you have any questions, pop it up in the chat and I'll try to answer them as we go. So the first thing we need to do, as it mentions in here, is to replace the default code in index.js with our following code. So what we have over here is just the updated title for our website, an updated description, and a new kind of lookish layout. So if you are just starting fresh for your website would look a bit different because it has different structure right now. Let me run this npm run dev. Starting a local host server. And when I come back, this is what your default website would look like when you get started from step 2. So the first thing we want to do is like customize the homepage of our website. So what we're going to do is, again, I'm just going to quickly copy the code that I have from here. And paste it in the index.js file. While I'm just copying and pasting the code, I'm also going to explain you what is happening over here. So if you remember, in HTML, we have a title tag and we also have a meta tag, which allows us to enter description for the website. Now, in the Remix world, we do that using the meta function. And in that meta function, we add the title and we add the description. And we can also add other meta information in here. Saying that, the next thing is we are setting up our component, and this component is what is rendered on the screen. So as you can see, it says update the name and the title. Let's first save this, come back, and over here we see it automatically updates the changes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it a bit more fun, and I'm going to call it hello, I'm Corgi, and I also want to update, let's just say, the subtitle. I'm going to just update this to woof woof. Save this, come back over here, and we see the changes live. So this is kind of finished, looks good. We got our website up and running. That's fantastic. We got our blog page, but doesn't really do anything. And we also got our about page, which again does not do really anything. All right, now we have our website up. We know a bit of the structure of our website. Let's go into Contentful and start creating the content type. Now in Contentful, we have the concept which is called spaces. What spaces really mean is a project. Think of it as a project repository. And in this project repository, you can store any kind of content that you want. But before that, you need to create your own content types. because in your scenario you might want to have a content type which which has just the title and the description, right? If you are creating a website for your guild where you have a list of all the of your guild members, you might want to have their image, their name, and maybe a link to their external website. This can be again their GitHub profile, their LinkedIn profile, or their websites, right? So you do that by going on to content model and you create a new content type. Now I'm going to do this from scratch. I have a new space over here. As you can see in here, I don't have any content and I also don't have any content model. So the first step is to create a content model. So I'm going to click on design content model and I'm going to call this blog because this content model is going to contain all my blogs. So I'm going to click on create and I'm going to click on add field. Now, because it's a blog, there are a couple of fields that I really want. The first is the title. So I'm going to call it title. I'm going to click on add and configure. And this particular is representing the title for my entry. So I'm going to select this. And in the validation, I'm going to say, yes, this is a required field. So that every time someone new to our contentful space is creating an entry, they know that this is a required field, and unless and until they do this they would not be able to add any new entries. All right, we got the title. The next thing is every blog post basically has a slug, right? Which is something like, I don't know, herschel.dev slash writing slash ABC or XYZ, right? And we want this slug to be automatically created. So we're going to also store that information in Contentful and ask Contentful to create that for us. So again, creating a new field, giving it a name slug, and then clicking on add and configure. In here, what I want to do is, yes, this is a required field. It is a unique field because I don't want a blog to have the same information. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select under appearance slug, and it says generate slug from. I have selected use entry field, which is again a title field, or you can select any other field that you want. This again is representing our title field, so I am gonna leave it as it is. Click on confirm. The next is a description because we also want a short description for our blog so that people know what they are looking into before they just jump into the blog. So I'm just gonna do a description. And this now is gonna be a long text field, not a short field, because I want it to have like more characters. And again, what I'm going to do is make it a required field. And in appearance, I'm just going to do a multi-line field. I don't want it to be a markdown field. Click on confirm. So this is the way that you can add different kind of content. You can add content types and fields in here. I'm going to click on save. This is going to get saved. Looks good. I can go to content. I can click on now add entry and add entry for this field. So let's just say I'm saying hello MLH. You can see it automatically generates the slug for me. And what I'm going to do is over here is just add a description. This is a description. Oops, there's a error. It looks good. I can now publish this. Now, one thing to remember is whenever you make changes to your content or whenever you create a new content, this is going to be in a draft state or the change state. That content is not going to be automatically published to your users. Once you are happy with those changes, once you are happy with this entry, you click on publish, and that's when these changes are available to the users. So now if I click on publish changes, wherever I'm rendering this content, my users can now see this particular content. So let's see this example again. I'm going to go to my previous space where I already have a couple of content. I'm going to click on add entry. I'm going to do a blog. Hello Global Hike Week. In here, this is my finished content model. Over here, I have all the information that I want to display to the user, or I want to store in this particular content type. I have a publish date. I'm going to select today's date. And then in this is a different editor. Now this is a rich text editor. In over here, I can do any kind of styling. This is bold, and I can just bold this text, and I'm going to get a bold styling for the word bold. And then I can add a cover image. I can either add a new media or I can add an existing one. For now, I'm just going to do an existing one. I'm going to select maybe the clouds, and I'm going to hit on publish. And now this entry is published. So if I go to my main tab and click on and change and restart the server, right, we find not bringing any changes from here. So I'm just gonna discard these changes. Let's do check out main. Now if I do npm run dev, come back to my website, go to the blog, we now see a new entry that's already available. Again, I did not have to make any code changes. I just published the content and now it's already available in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break because I see there's a lot of discussion going in the chat. I love that. And I'm going to try to answer a couple of questions that I see in the chat. There's one question I see in the chat is like how Contentful is different from GitHub. That's a wonderful question. So Contentful basically is a platform where you store your content, right? Whereas on GitHub you store your code. So that's the major difference between Contentful and GitHub. If you are having a blog, if you want to have that content of the blog, you use Contentful to store that content, but you don't store the actual code of the blog. The actual code of the blog still goes on GitHub. So for this like, particular example, the code of this particular website is still on GitHub. Over here is the repository, right? So the code is here, but I am getting that content from Contentful. I hope that answers your question. The next question I see is, if we choose Markdown, do we get a rendered version or a raw version? So if you choose Markdown, you do get a raw version, and we have helper libraries for that, which allow you to render Markdown and rich text. I did not show you rich text. I just gave you a quick idea of rich text. So if I open this particular entry, this is basically the rich text editor. So over here you see that there's the change jobs. I have links in here. So this is rich text. Basically, it gives you it kind of gives you an experience similar to Google Docs, where you can just select the content and add the stylings that you want, and then you can render it out on the website. But again, we'll give you a raw version, and you use the rich text render library to render it according to your stylings. Another question is, where is the code button? I'm not really sure what that question means. I would appreciate if you could just expand on that question. If you're asking about the GitHub repo, you can see the link is already being shown on the screen. You can just go in there, switch to step 2 branch or the step 3 branch, and just open it up in GitHub Codespaces. And you don't really need to you don't really need to then clone it or fork it and then install the packages yourself. All right. I see a really good question. Is there any way I could upload media from my website to Contentful and then get it back? Let's take a look. So you can basically connect Contentful to any kind of platforms out there. I can do like add an asset, single asset, and in here, if I click, all right. let's do it this way. I'm going to delete this particular entry. I'm going to try to add a new blog entry, and in here I'm going to do add a new media. And in the file selector, as you can see, I can get images from my Facebook, I can get images from Instagram, from Google Drive, from Dropbox. I can even take a picture, record a video, record an audio, and it's gonna get stored in Contentful. So you can do that within Contentful itself. And if you want to like connect it to another services like Cloudy Navi or Binder or stuff like that, you can use the applications that are available in a marketplace. I'm gonna delete this, and I will delete this entry as well because we don't need this. All right. All right. I see another question. So suppose if I use GitHub profile and upload my data to Contentful, then can I fetch that through APIs at GitHub pages? You can absolutely do that. You can absolutely do that. And let's jump into that. Okay, I'm just gonna try to see which step we do that particular thing, and I'm gonna jump onto that particular step. All right, so that's particularly step 3. So let's go ahead and start doing that in step 3. I'm gonna close this, move on to step 3 over here, and I'm gonna follow the instructions that are mentioned in here. So the first thing is to create a .env file. Now, .env file basically stands for environment variables, and this file stores your credentials that you would be needing to connect to an external API. In our case, that is Contentful. But first, before we do that, we need to generate this API case in Contentful. So let's go to Contentful. Now again, I am using the one that is already configured. I'm going to go to settings, and in here I am going to click on API keys. Once I do that, I get an add API key button. You can do that. And then it generates the tokens for you. So this is the space ID. Now, no matter how many spaces you create, each space is going to have a unique ID. And this is going to be unique to each and every space. And then there is a content delivery API. There is a content preview API. There's third API, which is not over here, which is the content management API. I'm going to talk a bit about these 3 APIs. The first, the content delivery API. This API allows you to fetch all the published content that you have on Contentful. And this is like a read only. So if you want to make changes to your content programmatically outside of Contentful, you cannot use this particular API. The next is the content preview API. It is similar to the delivery API, but with the preview API, you can also preview the content that is not yet published, which means which is still in the draft state. Again, this is also like a read-only API. It's not a write API as well. But the third API, which is the management API, is both read and write API. So whenever you are using the management API, you want to make sure that those API keys are not exposed. If you expose the delivery API key and the preview API key, that's still fine. You would only run into the problem of API limits. But apart from that, you're not going to run into any other problem. All right, so let's get started with this. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a .env file. And this env file should contain these variables. So I'm going to copy them, create a new file. All right, I already have a .env file which is configured in here, so I don't have to do that now. But as you can see, it says Contentful space ID. This is my space ID, and this is my Contentful access token. Now again, this access token is specific to my particular space. It's not specific to your space. I am going to delete my particular space after this workshop so that no one misuses this particular API, makes API makes continuous API calls basically to my space. All right. Okay. I see that are now a couple of questions coming in the chat. So I'm gonna quickly go through them, and then I'm gonna come back over here. But in the meantime, I hope this particular part is a bit more clear on what is environment variables and how do you create API keys in Contentful. Do Contentful provide webhooks for real-time updates? So there are webhooks in Contentful, and you can configure webhooks. So every time you publish a new content, or you make changes to a content, or you delete a content, whatever you do, you can trigger up a webhook. So if I go to settings, and over here there is webhooks, I can click on add webhook, and as you can see, I can specify a particular URL. If it's a post request, if it's a get request, I can change that. I can say like trigger it for all the events or just for specific events. And over here, you can see all the possible events that are available. And then I can also like add a couple of filters, add custom headers, and I can also like customize the webhook payload. So if I don't want to get the default payload, I can like specify this is the only information I need for this particular webhook payload. So that's basically the webhook, and I hope that also clears your question. I'm gonna come back. Let's see. All right. All right. I hope those were the questions and you all understood those. Now I'm gonna move forward with the next step, which is let's see, which is creating a contentful.server.js file. Now this particular file is gonna contain API calls, and we're gonna use this particular file to make calls to contentful and fetch that content. So let's go ahead and create this under the app repository. I'm gonna call contentful server.js. Now we are now getting the space from the environment variables, the access token, the URL, and then a reusable function. All right. Now, what I have done over here is created a reusable function. And every time I want to get a particular information, I just have to make a call. I just have to call this function with the variables in here, and it will get me the information. And in here, I am using a GraphQL API. If you want to use the REST API or the JavaScript SDK, you can do that. But I love GraphQL API, and let me show you why. Just gonna quickly go to the API keys first. All right, I do have my GraphQL playground in here. Perfect. So the GraphQL API basically gives you the information that you have asked for and nothing more and nothing less. So what it means, so let's just say you just want to get the title of the blog post. So I can say blog collection, and then in the items, I can get the title. If I execute this, I get the title of all the blog posts. Let's just say looks good. I want to also get the description. I can add the description, execute this, and now I have the description for this particular blog post. So this way you can generate your own GraphQL query and fetch the data that you need. If you don't need something, you can just remove that particular field, and GraphQL API would not give you that. All right, coming back to our code, we have the function over here. The next thing is to have another function, which is called get all blogs, which will basically get all the blogs from Contentful. We have get all blogs, and again, we have a query in here, which gets us the title, the slug, the description, and the cover image, which basically contains the URL and the description. And then again, I'm passing on that query to my previous function, which is API call. And then I'm just formatting that, just getting the JSON out of it, and then only returning the array that I need. The last thing I need to do is export this function. So I'm going to do export get all blogs. And now if I go to, let's just see, let's just go to the blog page. If I go to the blog page now, I can start getting this content in here. Now again, because I am using Remix, Remix has a function that is called loaders. And what this function does is it basically will execute before the page gets loaded, right? Which means that whenever a user goes now to my blog page, Remix is going to run the loader function first, do whatever I have in the loader function, and then load that particular page. So let's try to grab the blogs in here. I'm going to say await because again it's a promise. Get all blogs. You see, like I like VS Code because it automatically imports things for me, so I don't have to worry about it. And the last thing I want to do is return JSON and blocks. Now again, this is a remix pattern in here. So what I'm doing is I'm returning a JSON object, which is basically blocks. And I can refer this blocks down in my component over here using something called use loader data. So if I do const blocks, use loader data, and if I do console log, let's see, blogs, it should basically log all the blogs that I have. And I see a question in the in the chat. This is like the loading.txt in Next13 or like get server side props. This is mainly like get server side props. I think I'm not particularly sure about loading.txt in Next13. I still am diving deeper into Next13, so I'm not 100% sure what loading.txt does. But I think it basically handles the loading state, if I'm not wrong. But this is mainly think of it more on the get server side props in Next13. All right, so we save this. We come back to our website. I'm going to refresh this. Oops, we don't have a server running. Let's start that. Now have a website running. We refresh this. We got the blog page. And if I open, should be able to see an array of information in my console. Now I am getting all this information. Again, this is coming in from Contentful, right? So what I did was I created a .env file, and this .env file basically contains my space ID and my access token. And then I created a contentful.server.js file, which makes API calls to Contentful. And using that API calls, I am basically just getting the information that I need and just passing it on over here. All right, now that we have sorted that out, we also want this to look pretty. So I'm going to copy this. I'm going to basically update the component so that we get a list of blog articles in here. Paste this, and we need to also import the link component that Remix provides. If I come to my page, refresh it, close this, and we now get a list of all the blog posts. So this looks good. This looks like things are working, which is fantastic. Now I am gonna leave one thing out of it, which is the about page. Right now the about page is static. We need to create an about content type. So I'm going to quickly show you how that look. So the about content type looks something like this. You have a name, you have a short description, you have a long description. You can also have a GitHub link, a LinkedIn link, and the image. What I want you all to do is create this content, create this content type, and then try to write a function which queries this information and then render it out on the about page, right? You already have an example of how this is done on the blog page. But again, if you're not 100% sure, if you've tried enough, if you are not 100% sure, you can just, and if you want to check the code, you can go to that repo and check the code for that. All right, so this looks good. We got this working. Again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill my server. I'm going to head back and move on to the last step, which is step 4. And I'm like deleting these files because I already have them on my step 4 and I don't want to commit any changes. Oops. That was a bad command. No worries. Let's go to step 4. And I'm going to run the server. One thing if you might have noticed is if I go to my blog page and if I click on any of these pages, it gives me a 404, which is not ideal because we want now to see the actual blog content, but we cannot. So now what we are going to do is we're going to look into dynamic routing in Remix. So the way dynamic routing works in Remix is by using special characters in your file name. Because our structure is your website domain like example.com/blog/ your URL or your slug. We want blog underscore dot and then the $ slug.jsx. This is uh this is gonna create a dynamic route. So every time someone comes to blog slash something, it's gonna come over to this particular page now. So let's do export default function. So the default function basically is just your component that you want to render. Hello, this is a blog. Right. If we come back, I'm going to refresh this again. I might have to restart the server. Let's see. No. So now you see that this renders out for each and every page. If I come over here, it renders out for this particular page as well. But again, we are having a problem. This thing does not get the information from Contentful. This is still static, right? So let's go ahead and change that. All right. What we are going to do is in contentful.server.js, we're going to create a new function and we will call it get a single blog by slug because we are passing the slug information in there. Let's see if I have that in here. All right. Now again, because of the interest of time, I am kind of going a bit fast. But if you have any questions anytime, just let me know in the chat and I would be happy to answer that. And I see a couple of people are already asking questions and there are folks who are answering the questions as well. So thank you so much for doing that, for helping me out with that. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the chat. So now we have a function, as you can see over here, that is called get single blog by slug. What it means is we are going to pass a query which is going to take the slug. Now again, this slug is basically coming in from the URL on the top. And we're going to pass it to our query and it will give us the information for only that particular block now. And we are not going to get information for the other blocks. Let's remove the console or let's leave the console in here. And what we want to do is again have a loader function. First thing you want to do is extract the parameters from the loader function because this parameter basically contains the slug which is passed in the URL. Right. The next thing is again we need to make a call to Contentful and get the blog body. So I'm just gonna call it blog and then say await get single blog by slug. And in here I'm gonna pass the slug. And lastly, we're gonna do return JSON blog. Similar to what we did earlier, I can do const extract the blog using the use loader data function. And if I do console.log blog, it should basically give me the blog. If I refresh this, I got no errors. If I come over here, you can see that we have our data in here for this particular block. So if I come back, let's just say to this one and check it out over here, we got a block collection array and we got the new information coming in. Now, see a question popping up in the chat. My GraphQL playground keeps showing a blank window. Any idea why that might be happening? Uh, you might have to first of all make sure that you have content models in there and you have a bit of entries in there. Like if you just have a single entry, that's completely fine. The next thing is you want to make sure that you have your when you install that application, you set up the preview API. So let's just say I want to install this in here. I'm going to go to marketplace, GraphQL playground, click on install, authorize access, and then in here you need to pass on your content preview tokens and not your delivery tokens. So enter your your preview token, click on install, click on save, and then you should be able to have access to the playground. If again you still have any problem with that, you can always ask me later on. You got my Twitter handle over here. Just feel free to pop me a question on Twitter, or you just can just join our community Slack and ask the question over there. All right. Another question I see in the chat is, we can style it to our liking in Remix. Yes, you can definitely change the styling to your liking in Remix. If let's just say you want to change this in here, I can simply do that. I'm going to add a main tag and give it a class name, say container. Again, I'm using Tailwind CSS for this, but you can use whatever framework, CSS framework you want. If you want to write custom CSS, you can do that as well. I'm also going to give this a class name. I'm going to say text 3XL. Let's just give that. Come back. Now see the style has updated. All right. Now let's go ahead and modify this particular thing so that this is now also dynamic and we get it based on the actual title of the blog and not something that's static. So if I refresh this, now we got the title for our blog. It's fantastic. So if I come over here, it says hello GHW. If I open this one, it gives me the title of this particular blog post. All right. One other thing that I want to quickly show you all is rendering rich text, because let's just come back over here. I'm going to open my console again. Over here, if you see, the content that I have is basically an object. And this object contains a lot of things which actually contains the information that I have. All right. I'm not sure if folks can hear me or see me. Can you all let me know if you can see me or hear me, because my screen seems to be frozen now. All right, perfect. So I'm going to continue with this and let's go over here. We now have implemented and connected Contentful to our website. We also looked into how dynamic routing works. The last thing we want to do is load our rich text in to our website. So the first thing you want to do is like install the package that we have for you, which makes it easy to render rich text. While that package is getting installed, I'm going to come over here and import these two particular functions that I need. And then the last thing I want to do is have my object for rich text in here. Let's paste it here. That's all right. And then I'm going to also, oops, we forgot the image. So let's get that and then render the rich text. All right. I am assuming you folks can still hear me and see me. But again, if you cannot hear me or see me, just let me know in the chat. I have chat open on a different window. So things should work. All right. Now I have things up and running. Perfect. npm run dev. I'm going to do that. That's my server. Fantastic. I'm going to come back, close this because I don't want to look into it right now. And if I click on it, we got the title, we got the image, and now we got our rich text rendered as well. So this is how you basically you render rich text. And now let me walk you through the code. So what we did was we imported a library from Contentful, which allows us to render rich text in the React way. And over here we have rich text render options, which is basically an object. And in this object, we define how we want to render a particular thing. For example, hyperlink. For all my hyperlinks, I want to have them underlined and I want to have a text color primary. For all my paragraphs, I want them to have a text gray with all the styling. For all my headings, I want them to have a text size of 4XL. And for all my heading 2, I want them to have the text style of 3XL. And then over here, I am using that function, passing on the content and passing on the object or my stylings that I created over here. And then we got a rich styling over here in Contentful. Perfect. All right. So I know I walked through the things a bit fast, but I hope you all got an idea of what on how to create your own website with Contentful and use Remix. Now this is just touching the iceberg, but there is a lot of things that you can do with Contentful. Again, right now the website that we have is kind of local. It's not published anywhere. So go ahead, once you have your website up and running, deploy it to wherever you want. You can do GitHub pages, you can do Netlify, you can do WordShare, you can do Cloudflare. Wherever you want to deploy your website, you can do that. Again, when you do that, make sure you configure your Contentful environment variables in that particular platform, be it GitHub pages, be it Netlify, be it WordShare, wherever you are deploying it. Again, we did not cover everything in here, but there are still a lot of things that you can do. So I would encourage you all to go to a developer portal. Again, all those links are already in that repo. So go to the developer portal, check out what all you can do with Contentful, and create your own applications within Contentful to enhance your Contentful experience. Create websites for your community, for your teams, or just for yourself. With this, thank you all for joining in. I know there are a couple of questions in the chat. Again, unfortunately, my chat screen is frozen, so I'm just going to try to disconnect and connect back to this particular window, and hopefully things might work. So let's see. I'm just going to, Rosendo, if you can just put my screen off.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
So I did promise that there would be a swag drop for this session. Harshal, while Harshal is getting his screen ready and fixing things up on his end, I am going to go ahead and pick someone for an awesome. Rosendo was buffering. Yeah, this was happening earlier. This is what I was afraid of. How's like my screen quality now? Tried to change one of the settings. Let me know. All right. I've got my definition up. Blurry. That's too bad. Oh, looks like Harshal is back to save me from this terrible content that I have in terms of like my screen quality. We do have 5 minutes left until the keynote speech. So Harshal, I know you wanted to answer some questions, but I was hoping you could actually pick someone out at random from the chat so that we could give them a swag drop. I was gonna give you the honors of doing that. So yeah, if you just want to like randomly pick someone out from the chat, we'll go ahead and
That's
get them set up with a swag drop.
that's the most difficult job that I've ever got. All right. I'm just gonna probably give you the name in the private chat. Do you want me to
Okay,
do that? Or do you want to say it out
yeah,
loud?
that's perfectly fine.
All right.
The suspense. Okay, here we go. All right, so our swag drop winner has been chosen. Quick drum roll. Here we go. And congratulations. I don't know how to pronounce this name, Krish. I'm assuming, but yeah. Go ahead and open up a ticket with us in the Global Hack Week Discord, and yeah, let us know. Just like reference this. You could even take a screenshot if you'd like and add it there. Yeah, just let us know, and we'll get you that swag drop. Congratulations, and yeah, at this point, like Harshal, I'll let you take it away with whatever questions you wanna answer.
All right. Congratulations, Chris. And I think I've answered almost all the questions, but there is an interesting question about being a developer advocate. I'm just going to try to read out the question. I have a question. You mentioned your role as a developer advocate in the beginning of the workshop. I'm interested in pursuing a career in developer relations in the future. I know what the roles of a developer advocate are, but just wanted to know what you exactly do as a developer advocate. Is your role geared towards developer education, like right now, always, or you do other things like writing integrations, hosting events, running ambassador programs? Wow. Okay, this is a very very interesting question because you don't, as a developer advocate, I kind of do a lot of these things, almost everything, but I love to focus more on developer education. So that's my primary goal of being a developer advocate. So whatever I do, I try to make sure that I am educating people, be it hosting events. If I'm hosting any events, I make sure that I have talks in there which help people learn something new. If I'm writing integrations, the way I like to do that is if I'm writing integrations, I reuse that particular content. So I do try to do a talk around it. I try to write a blog post around it so that other people who are interested in writing integrations know how to do that and they can then write their own integrations. So that is how I do developer advocacy. And I hope that answers your question a bit. I know like this topic, I can talk about it forever. And I know we have very limited time. So, but yeah, that's how I basically do developer advocacy.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, I hope that answers your questions, y'all. Really, Harshal, thanks once again for joining us. It was a really informative session. I hope everyone out there will go ahead and participate in the contentful challenges that we have throughout the week. Also, more importantly, well, not more importantly, but more timely is the upcoming talk from Swift in the next 2 minutes. So make sure you stick around and join us for that. There's going to be a lot of cool things that are announced. So yeah, definitely join us. It's going to be here on Twitch or on YouTube, wherever you happen to be joining us. And yeah, if you want to tell your friends, definitely do so. Jump on social media and give us a tweet or like a mention on Instagram, anywhere you are currently interacting with folks. Let them know. Outside of that, thank you once again to Harshal. Really, really awesome moment having you back here as a sponsor after having been a coach for so many years. And yeah, really really excited to see y'all and join for the for the announcement in just a minute. So see y'all soon, and yeah, have a good one. Later, y'all.
Thank you for having me. Have a nice one.